Good morning. Here's what you missed over the last 10 hours. You had 23 videos worth catching up on, covering everything from Claude's performance regressions and the shifting AI job market to Hyundai's new electric vehicles and a major victory for gaming preservation. Let's dive in. Starting with the big AI story of the day, Theo was really fired up about Claude's declining performance, and for good reason. While many have been complaining about AI models getting dumber, Theo dug deep into the technical infrastructure and found the real culprit isn't the underlying models, but Anthropic's poor engineering decisions. He demonstrated how Claude Code's harness forces unnecessary API calls due to a file must be read first rule, even when the model already knows the file contents. This creates cascading waste. Matt Mauer's benchmarks show Opus performing 15% worse in Claude Code versus Cursor, which Theo called enough to get people fucking fired. The problems stack up. A new tokenizer in Opus 4.7 increased token usage by 1.47x. The million token context window routes traffic to worse-performing hardware. And infrastructure bugs documented in Anthropic's own September postmortem affected up to 16% of requests. AMD's AI director provided damning quantitative evidence showing thinking depth declined 73%, stop hook violations increased 10x, and permission-seeking behaviors that never existed before suddenly appeared. Theo's conclusion was scathing. This isn't model regression, but engineering incompetence making $200 month subscriptions deliver worse service. On a related note about the changing tech landscape, Stefan Mischuk delivered some tough love for junior developers. Drawing on his 30 years of experience, Stefan argued that React skills are no longer the golden ticket they were 4 or 5 years ago. Back then, there was such high demand for React developers that companies hired juniors just to write boilerplate code. Now AI can handle all that boilerplate work, fundamentally changing what employers need. Stefan's key insight is that experienced developers are seeing 5-10x productivity gains with AI, while those without strong fundamentals hit what he calls the 80% wall. They can get most of the way to a solution, but then everything falls apart. His advice: stop focusing solely on React and instead learn AI-based development tools combined with strong programming fundamentals, system-level thinking, and design patterns. He presented compelling data showing how abstraction has increased dramatically from 1990 to 2026, with AI being the latest layer that squeezed manual coding requirements to a tiny fraction while enabling much more sophisticated applications. Speaking of the broader job market challenges, Nate from AI News and Strategy daily tackled what he calls the fundamental value crisis affecting all tech workers. His core argument is that AI has broken the traditional mechanism for proving professional worth. When generating impressive code and projects becomes essentially free, how do you demonstrate actual expertise? This isn't just hitting junior developers, but affects everyone from new grads to senior product managers who can't effectively show their contributions. With over 60,000 confirmed Q1 tech job cuts, including Oracle's 30,000, Block's 4,000, and Amazon's 16,000, companies are reassessing what workers are worth when combined with AI capabilities. Nate outlined a 5-principle framework for navigating this. Focus on comprehension over generation, make explanation an inseparable artifact of your work, view your career as transactions rather than credentials, work in the open rather than behind closed doors, and ship proof of thinking directly with your deliverables. His key insight is that while AI makes production trivial, it makes genuine understanding and taste more valuable than ever. Diving deeper into how successful companies are actually using AI, the AI Daily Brief presented fascinating research showing that the best companies approach AI fundamentally differently than everyone else. PwC found that 75% of AI's economic gains were captured by just 20% of companies, and these leaders weren't just better at using AI. They used it for entirely different purposes. They were 2.6 times more likely to use AI for business model reinvention rather than just efficiency gains. McKinsey's study of 20 AI leader companies found they achieved 20% EBITDA uplift, reaching break-even in 1 to 2 years and generating $3 incremental EBITDA for every dollar invested. The standout case study was Ramp, where 99% of employees use AI daily through their internal glass system. Rather than limiting capabilities to accommodate non-technical users, they preserved full AI functionality while making complexity invisible. Their three core principles: don't limit anyone's upside, turn one person's breakthrough into everyone's baseline, and make the product itself the enablement. The result is a coordinated AI transformation where discoveries immediately propagate across the organization rather than everyone figuring things out in isolation. For individuals looking to level up their AI usage, Vicky Zhao provided a compelling framework for thinking beyond the typical AI as assistant approach. Her central thesis is that AI proficiency isn't about seniority, but about positioning yourself as the big boss, who uses AI as a chief of staff rather than just a smart intern. This fundamentally changes the types of conversations you have with AI instead of task delegation. You're engaging in higher-order strategic thinking and vision-to-execution planning. She advocates spending equal time on three areas: learning that results in actual behavior change rather than just information consumption, creating through problem ownership rather than just following other solutions, and systematizing workflows with emphasis on identifying the 20% that matters most. Her key insight is moving from completion logic, where you just finish tasks, to loop thinking, where you continuously improve processes. The goal is developing your perspective on what's worth doing and how to do it well, rather than just supercharging task completion. On the technical implementation side, a senior cloud engineer demonstrated exactly how AI tools are transforming infrastructure deployment. Using GitHub Copilot CLI combined with Azure skills, he turned what would traditionally be a complex, time-consuming deployment into a 41-minute end-to-end process from scratch. The key was leveraging MCP, Model Context Protocol, servers that expose tools, prompts, and resources to AI agents, plus skills that encapsulate experience and knowledge in reusable templates. He deployed a fast API application with PostgreSQL and sentiment analysis via Azure OpenAI, with the AI agent handling all infrastructure code generation using AZD and Bicep. The crucial insight was the experience advantage in skill selection, with 25 plus available skills. Knowing which to enable or disable per task minimizes agent confusion. For beginners, he showed how asking the agent to explain tools in plain language and assess relevance can provide understanding equivalent to experienced professionals. The deployment worked perfectly, except for one issue requiring steering, injecting corrective prompts, while the agent worked to fix the Azure OpenAI configuration. Moving to mobile AI capabilities, Adrien Grondin showcased impressive progress in running language models locally on iPhones. Using Apple's MLX framework optimized for Apple Silicon, he demonstrated Gemma running at 40 tokens per second on the latest iPhones, with older models still achieving a respectable 20 tokens per second. His app Locally AI can run various models including QN and SmallLM from Hugging Face's MLX community, which hosts 4,5000 quantized models, with new ones typically available within 30 minutes of release. For developers, the MLX Swift LM repository on GitHub makes implementation straightforward. Adrien claimed you can have an iOS app with a running model in less than 10 minutes. The sweet spot for iPhone deployment is 4-bit to 8-bit quantization, balancing model size constraints with quality preservation. He also announced that Locally AI had been acquired by LM Studio, the popular AI studio for local model management that can serve models via OpenAI or Anthropic-compatible APIs. Speaking of local AI challenges, Manilow experienced firsthand what happens when your AI infrastructure breaks down. When both his OpenClaw and Hermes systems failed overnight, he used it as an opportunity to explore commercial AI coding tools and reflect on building what he calls a living archive, a personal knowledge base that becomes your true AI asset independent of which specific tools you use. He's been building this archive for 9-10 months using Obsidian, capturing memory logs not just of what he did with AI, but why he did it, what problems arose, and what solutions worked. The archive includes around 100 protocols, detailed instructions for how AI should behave in specific scenarios according to his preferences and philosophy. His key realization was the importance of having an AI strategist, separate from worker agents, that helps maintain high-level thinking and keeps you aligned with your core principles. Commercial AIs try to minimize friction to maximize productivity, but friction is actually valuable because it forces you to add creative input and maintain control over the AI relationship. On a completely different note, Linus Tech Tips attempted something wonderfully absurd, building a gaming PC at 40,000 feet to set a world record. Taking advantage of a sponsored trip to an Equinix data center, they faced the challenge of working within their private jet's 960-watt total AC power limit. They chose a Ryzen 5 9600X for power efficiency over raw performance and had to forget their fractal design Terra case on the ground, leading to improvised assembly on a desk using an LTT mod mat. The power situation proved complex, no 120V outlets except in the galley, requiring extension cords past sleeping passengers, and USB-C replacements would cost $700–900 each. For gaming, they used an MSI Ventus RTX 5060 that they undervolted and combined with DLSS 4.5 upscaling. Internet connectivity was nearly impossible with aviation Wi-Fi constantly dropping, but they successfully ran Cyberpunk 2077 at stable frame rates with their power-optimized settings. The CPU stayed around 70 degrees after power limiting, and GPU consumption peaked at 125 watts, but typically ran around 60 watts during gameplay. Moving to Apple news, Max Tech revealed 7 unreleased Apple products likely coming at a May event. The lineup includes a budget iPad 12 with A18 chip and 8 GB RAM for Apple Intelligence, Apple TV 4K with A17 Pro chip, M5 Mac Mini with 512 GB base storage and $200 price increase, HomePod Mini 2 with S11 chip, M5 Mac Studio, M5 iMac potentially delayed until fall, and the new HomePad smart home device with 7-inch display running Home OS. The star of the show is the M5 chip series, which Max described as offering some of the biggest performance improvements since the M1 Max. He's been testing the M5 Max in MacBook Pros for a month and found it outperformed the RTX 5090 laptop in multiple tests. The anticipated M5 Ultra should hit around 35,000 points in Geekbench 6, with graphics performance nearly matching the desktop RTX 5090, but with up to 512 GB of unified memory, usable as VRAM versus the 5090's 32 GB limitation. The HomePad will feature built-in Siri, Face ID, center stage camera, and both wall mount and tabletop speaker options. Speaking of Apple hardware, Quinn from Snazzy Labs delivered a brutally honest review of the AirPods Max 2. While the H2 chip brings better noise cancellation and marginally improved sound quality, Apple fixed none of the original's fundamental flaws. This is Quinn's 7th pair due to Apple replacements for battery issues, microphone failures, and connectivity problems. The ANC represents a massive improvement with consistent noises completely disappearing, but the headphones still suffer from mediocre 20-hour battery life, heavy aluminum construction that develops condensation during workouts, hard clamping force, no power button, and the garbage case situation, where standby doesn't work reliably. Quinn's pair died over a weekend despite claiming to hibernate. While the new wired lossless capability via USB-C is nice, he argued it doesn't matter much because the headphones aren't good enough for most people to notice differences. He praised competitors like the B and WPX 7S3s as criminally underrated and costing $70 less while sounding better with superior battery life. His final recommendation: spend $550 on AirPods Pro 3 plus Sennheiser HD 650s and a cheap amp for better overall experience. In electric vehicle news, the Ioniq guy provided detailed coverage of Hyundai's production-ready Ioniq 3. Unveiled in Milan as a compact EV crossover designed specifically for European markets. The car offers impressive range of 344 km from a 42 kWh battery or 496 km from the 61 kWh version, though he was skeptical of these claims, estimating real-world range closer to 260-270 miles. Key features include the new Playos Connect infotainment system based on Android Automotive, a unique eyebrow screen near the windshield instead of traditional behind-wheel display, and comprehensive physical controls for HVAC and other functions. The design stays true to the concept while being taller and more SUV-like, with dimensions of 4.15x4.170 length depending on trim. Notable interior features include wireless charging, adjustable cup holder inserts, paddle shifters with iPedal 3 system, and a deep trunk subfloor compartment capable of fitting a roller bag. Despite intense European competition from Chinese manufacturers, Hyundai is positioning this as an affordable city car smaller than the Kona Electric. The electric Viking provided additional first-hand coverage from Milan, emphasizing the Ioniq 3's exceptional efficiency credentials. He was particularly impressed by the 61 kWh battery, delivering essentially 500 kilometers of range, calling it among the most efficient EVs he's seen. The massive 119-liter Mega Box frunk was the largest he'd encountered for this size vehicle, combined with 322-liter rear boot for 441 liters total storage. Technical specs include 108 kW power output, modest 996-second acceleration times, and vehicle-to-grid capability with 22 kW output, a rare feature with warranty coverage. The presenter noted the 0.263 drag coefficient contributing to efficiency, though performance clearly wasn't the focus. European models will be built in Turkey to avoid Chinese automaker tariffs, with extensive color options and the new Playos Connect system featuring 13-inch or 14.6-inch displays. He identified the Volkswagen ID.3 Neo as the main competitor, offering 600 km range, but likely at 10% higher cost. The electric Viking also reported on Hyundai's remarkable sales surge in Australia, where EV orders jumped 355% in March 2025, going from under 3% to 20% of total orders despite facing over 150 competing EV models, mostly from China with no tariffs. This represents orders jumping from 228 in February to 1,037 in March, nearly a 5x increase. The broader Australian EV market saw 89% year-over-year growth, capturing a record 14.6% market share, though this would have been higher if not for widespread stock shortages. Used EV inventory dropped dramatically from over 10,000 at the beginning of 2025 to around 1,000 currently. Hyundai responded by securing 158% more EV supply for Q2, including major increases for the Kona Electric, up 315%, Alexios, up 57%, Insters, up 204%, and Ioniq 5s, up 56%. The Kona Electric emerged as their bestseller with 366 Q1 sales, including 236 in March alone. The company projects a 70% increase in EV orders for Q2 versus Q1. Shifting to cultural topics, Mitchell S. Jackson from TED delivered a fascinating analysis of NBA fashion as a reflection of Black resistance and American social change. He traced 6 eras from the 1940s to today, starting with early pioneers who dressed conservatively to prove their dignity as de facto ambassadors, through the 1970s, when 75% of players were Black, and began expressing their hard-fought freedom through flashy jewelry, afros, and dashikis. Jordan's 1980s era reflected Reagan-era prosperity but apparent political disengagement, while the 1990s hip-hop influence led to the controversial NBA dress code restricting Black expression. The 5th era saw players become Black dandies when fashion industry exclusion ended, and the current Instagram era turned the walk from arena to locker room into an unscripted space of expression. Jackson concluded by connecting this history to current political threats, questioning how broad oppression would shape a league where Black players remain the majority and foreign-born players are major stars. His central message: fashion can serve as both reflection of the times and tool of resistance against power structures. On the open source front, Brian Lunjuk reported on troubling censorship patterns within Arch Linux. The distribution deleted the XLibre Wiki page citing code of conduct violations, then began aggressively censoring anyone questioning this decision. What makes this particularly hypocritical is that Arch maintains dedicated pages for GNOME despite what Lunjuk describes as regular, crazy, vulgar, libelous tirades, calling people Nazis and fascists and ethno-supremacist baby killers. Plus having a primary developer who is a registered sex offender and repeat child abuser. The censorship spread beyond the wiki to forums, the Arch subreddit, and Discord, with moderators claiming that several people having the same opinion that contradicts Arch is harassment. Lunjuk provided additional examples of political censorship, including requests to censor criticism of age verification law supporters and more extreme cases where Arch team members allegedly called for his murder in February 2025. He also mentioned the strange situation where Germany paid $500,000 to Arch specifically to rewrite package management tools in Rust, funding an organization with these behavioral issues. In gaming preservation news, Yang Ye celebrated major victories for the Stop Killing Games campaign. The movement achieved success in a European Parliament hearing where all members responded positively to preventing games from disappearing when servers shut down. Additionally, California introduced the Protect Our Games Act, requiring companies to either keep games functional after server shutdowns or provide full refunds. Ross Scott's parliamentary testimony was particularly effective, arguing that customers lack real protections when buying server-dependent games and comparing the situation unfavorably to other industries, where book publishers can't reclaim books from homes and insurance policies, inform customers when coverage ends. Scott presented hard data showing that of 400 server-dependent titles examined, 93.5% were disabled when support ended, calling this responsible for more destruction to the medium than anything else by an enormous margin. The California legislation would require companies to notify consumers before ending support, prohibit selling games within 2 months of end of life, and mandate plans for continued access through patches or private server functionality. On the game development front, Mike from Game From Scratch demonstrated implementing Gaussian splats in Godot using the new GDGS plugin. Gaussian splats are ellipsoid data structures, or virtual 3D pixels, created from arrays of camera captures that can recreate 3D scenes with unprecedented detail. While the technology is impressive, Mike highlighted significant limitations, including massive file sizes. Examples ranged from 10 MB to 850 MB compared to equivalent polygon models at 1 MB. No built-in collision detection requiring manual setup, lighting that doesn't interact with splats automatically, and Godot struggling with very large 4-5 GB files. The plugin setup involves installing GDGS from GitHub and adding a Gaussian compositor effect in world environment settings. Mike suggested the technology might be better suited for pipeline use, importing objects, as splats than converting to polygons rather than using splats directly in games. He demonstrated SuperSplat, a web viewer built on Play Canvas, showing how scan quality depends entirely on the number of source photos taken. OpenAI demonstrated their life sciences model integrated into Codex for helping scientists prioritize drug targets. The demo showed comparing 3 asthma targets, IL-33, TSLP, and IL-1-RL1, by combining internal data analysis with literature search through multi-agent workflows. The system analyzed internal evidence packages containing assay results, biomarker strategies, tractability data, and target product profiles, then identified gaps where additional evidence could strengthen analysis. A sophisticated feature was spawning 6 specialized subagents to tackle different evidence domains independently: genetics, translational biology, regulatory context, keeping them separate and unbiased until final synthesis. One agent named Pascal gathered human genetics evidence while others handled different aspects. The model accessed multiple scientific databases, surfaced locus to gene context, followed genetic signals across patient cohorts, and generated visual outputs including rank and evidence heat maps, GWAS plots, and internal assay panels. The presenter emphasized the model's enhanced, biointelligence for complex scientific reasoning tasks. Finally, wrapping up with some practical wellness advice, Newell of Knowledge tackled why people feel constantly exhausted despite not necessarily doing more work. His insight is that exhaustion comes from constantly controlling yourself through rigid self-rules like, I must, I have to, and I should that act like an internal CCTV camera that never switches off. These rules create perpetual tension because there's no off switch. They run 24/7 and often fire strongest when you're already tired. The solution is shifting from seeing these as absolutes to preferences. Instead of I have to clean everything before I can rest, try, usually I like to clean before I rest, but I don't have to. He provided the soft method for loosening these rules. Spot the tension and underlying, must-should, sentence, observe by distancing yourself, frame by shifting to preference language, and test by running gentle experiments that show your brain the world doesn't end when you softly break a rule. The key insight is that preferences can relax but rules cannot, and this simple shift can dramatically restore energy by reducing the constant self-monitoring that drains mental resources. That's your comprehensive update for the last 10 hours. The big themes were AI infrastructure challenges, the evolving job market, impressive hardware launches, and some significant wins for both gaming preservation and practical wellness. Quite a packed day across the tech landscape.